Podcast script, The Hidden Side of Success. Introduction. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're diving into a topic that most people try to hide, delete, or forget: failure. In a world filled with the perfect Instagram feeds and LinkedIn success stories, we've become terrified of making mistakes. We see the trophy, the mansion, and the promotion, but we rarely see the sleepless nights or the hundreds of no's that came before them. But what if I told you that failure isn't the opposite of success? It is actually the most important ingredient of it. The survival bias problem. We often suffer from what psychologists call survival bias. We only listen to the winners, so we assume their path was a straight line to the top. But if you look at history, the pattern is different. Take Thomas Edison, for example. When he was inventing the light bulb, he didn't just fail once, he failed thousands of times. His famous quote remains one of the best mindsets for anyone trying to achieve something great. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. The problem isn't the failure itself, it's our relationship with it. We view failure as a stop sign, when it's actually a GPS recalculating our route. Why you should fail fast. There is a concept in Silicon Valley called fail fast. The idea is simple. The sooner you fail, the sooner you learn what doesn't work, which brings you closer to what does work. Every time you mess up a project, lose a client, or fail an exam, you are collecting data. This data is more valuable than any textbook because it's personal. It shows you exactly where your weaknesses are and gives you a chance to build resilience, which is the mental muscle that allows you to get back up when life knocks you down. Section 2. The biology of growth, neuroplasticity. To understand why failure is necessary, we have to look at our brains. From a biological perspective, learning only happens when we make a mistake. There's a fascinating concept called neuroplasticity. When you perform a task perfectly, your brain is essentially on autopilot. It's not growing, it's just repeating a pattern. However, when you make a mistake, your brain receives a surprise signal. It says, wait, that didn't work. We need to adjust. This tension, this slight frustration you feel when you fail, is actually the physical feeling of your brain rewiring itself. Without that friction, there is no growth. In other words, if you aren't failing, you're literally not getting any smarter. Section 3. The social media illusion, the comparison trap. One of the reasons we hate failing so much today is social media. We are the first generation in history that compares our behind-the-scenes footage with everyone else's highlight reel. Think about it. You see a 20-year-old entrepreneur on TikTok who just bought a Ferrari. You feel like a failure because you're struggling to pay rent or finish a degree. But you don't see the thousands of boring, unsuccessful hours behind that 15-second clip. This creates a perfectionism paralysis. We become so afraid of looking uncool or unsuccessful in front of others that we stop trying new things altogether. We choose the safety of mediocrity over the risk of greatness. Section 4. Reframing your identity. The most dangerous part of failing is when we turn the verb into a noun. You might fail at a business, but that doesn't make you a failure. There is a massive difference. Look at J.K. Rowling. Before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, she was a single mother living on welfare, and her manuscript was rejected by 12 different publishers. She could have easily identified herself as a failed writer. Section 5. Practical steps to embrace failure. So, how do we practically change our mindset? The 10% rule. Tell yourself that 10% of everything you do should be a failure. If everything is succeeding, it means you aren't pushing your boundaries far enough. Audit your mistakes. Once a month, sit down and write, what did I fail at this month and what did it teach me? Turn your losses into lessons. Detach your ego. Stop tying your self-worth to your results. You are a human being, not a productivity machine. Section 6. The Stoic perspective, amor fati. To truly master the art of failing, we should look back at the ancient wisdom of the Stoics. They had a concept called amor fati, which translates to a love of fate. It doesn't mean just accepting what happens to you, it means loving it. It means looking at a disaster, a failed business, a broken relationship, or a lost job, and saying, this is exactly what I needed to grow. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think about that for a second. The obstacle is not in your way, the obstacle is the way. When you fail, you aren't being detoured from your path, the failure is the path itself. It's the universe testing your resolve and forcing you to innovate. When you adopt this mindset, you become unbeatable, because there is no outcome that you cannot use to your advantage. Section 7. The myth of the overnight success. We also need to deconstruct the myth of the overnight success. In our fast-paced digital culture, we are obsessed with speed. We want the result, and we want it now. But nature doesn't work that way. A bamboo tree takes 5 years to break through the ground. For 5 years, you see nothing. No leaves, no branches, no progress. But during those 5 years, it is building a massive, complex root system underground. Section 8. Psychological safety and the growth mindset. Finally, let's talk about Carol Dweck's revolutionary work on the growth mindset. Through years of research, she found that people who believe their intelligence is fixed view failure as a verdict. They think, I failed, so I am stupid. But those with a growth mindset view failure as a strategy. They think, that strategy didn't work, let me try a different one. They don't attach their ego to the result. Imagine a child learning to walk. Does the child fall down 50 times and think, maybe walking just isn't for me? No. They don't judge themselves. They don't feel embarrassed. They just get back up and try again. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, we lose that bravery. We start caring more about how we look than how we grow. It's time to get that childlike curiosity back. Section 9. The Golden Cage, the Danger of Comfort. We've talked about the pain of failure, but let's talk about something even more dangerous, the absence of failure. If your life is going perfectly smoothly right now, if you haven't made a mistake in months, you should be worried. Why? Because it means you are living in a golden cage. You are playing it too safe. Comfort is the greatest enemy of greatness. When we stay in our comfort zones, our skills begin to atrophy. Like a muscle that isn't used, your potential starts to shrink. Most people choose a predictable life because they fear the sting of a mistake. But the price of that predictability is a life of what-ifs. In 20 years, the pain of a failed business will be gone, but the pain of never knowing if you could have succeeded will stay with you forever. Failure is the tax you pay for admission to the big leagues. If you aren't willing to pay that tax, you don't get to play the game. Section 10. Post-traumatic growth. In psychology, there is a concept known as PTG, post-traumatic growth. We all know about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but PTG is the opposite. It is the phenomenon where people experience positive psychological change as a result of struggling with highly challenging life circumstances. Think of a forest fire. It looks like a disaster. Everything is black, burned, and dead. But some of the most beautiful and strongest trees in the world, like the giant sequoia, actually need the heat of a fire to release their seeds. Without the fire, the new generation of trees can never be born. Your failures are your forest fires. They are clearing out the old, dead brush of your ego and your bad habits to make room for a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more grounded. You aren't being destroyed, you are being cleared for a new growth cycle. Section 11. Playing the long game. The reason we fear failure so much is that we are too focused on the short game. We look at this week, this month, or this year. When we zoom out and look at a 40-year career or an 80-year life, a single failure looks like a tiny dot on a huge map. If you want to be successful, you have to increase your failure tolerance. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, often says that Amazon is the best place in the world to fail. They have lost billions of dollars on failed projects like the Fire Phone. But those failures gave them the insights to create things like AWS and Alexa. Bezos plays the long game. He knows that if you want to find the one thing that works, you have to be willing to walk through 10 things that don't. Are you willing to be misunderstood or judged for a long time while you find your way? Success is simply a game of staying in the room long enough for luck to find you. Section 12, The Infinite Game, Beyond Winning and Losing. We have been conditioned to think of life as a finite game, a game with a beginning, an end, and a clear winner. But the philosopher James Carse argues that life is actually an infinite game. In a finite game, you play to beat the other person. In an infinite game, you play to keep playing. When you view failure through the lens of an infinite game, everything changes. You realize that there is no final whistle. There is no game over unless you decide to walk off the field. A failure in your 30s is just a plot twist in a 90-year story. The only way to lose the infinite game of life is to stop being curious. As long as you are learning, as long as you are evolving, the game continues. Your failure isn't a defeat, it's just a change in the level of difficulty. It's the universe asking, are you still interested in playing? Section 13, The Beauty of the Scars, the Kintsugi Mindset. In Japan, there is a beautiful art form called kintsugi. When a piece of pottery breaks, they don't throw it away. Instead, they repair the cracks with gold. They believe that the break makes the object more beautiful and more valuable because it now has a history. We need to apply kintsugi to our own lives. Most of us try to hide our failures. We wear masks to look perfect. But perfection is boring. Perfection is flat. It is our cracks, the bankruptcies, the heartbreaks, the rejected ideas that give us depth and character. When you heal your failures with wisdom and resilience, you become golden. You become a person who can sit across from someone else in pain and say, I've been there. I broke, too. And look how I shine now. That is true human connection. That is true leadership. Section 14, Radical Responsibility. The final step in mastering failure is what I call radical responsibility. It's easy to blame the economy, your boss, your parents, or your luck when things go wrong. And while some of those things might be true, blaming them robs you of your power. When you say, this is my fault, or I am responsible for how I respond to this, you suddenly hold the steering wheel again. Failure is the ultimate mirror. It shows you who you really are when the lights go out and the applause stops. Are you someone who complains? Or are you someone who adapts? Radical responsibility turns a tragedy into a training ground. It transforms you from a victim of circumstance into an architect of fate. Section 15, The Echo of Your Actions, Legacy. Finally, let's talk about the echo. Every time you fail publicly and get back up, you are giving someone else permission to do the same. You might think your struggle is private, but it's not. Your children are watching you. Your friends are watching you. Your followers are watching you. When they see you stumble and continue with a smile, you are teaching them more about success than any textbook ever could. Your legacy isn't your bank account. Your legacy is the courage you inspired in others by being brave enough to fail. You are building a bridge for the next generation to walk over. So, the next time you feel the sting of defeat, remember, you aren't just doing this for you. You are doing it for everyone who is too afraid to take the first step. You are the proof that it can be done. Section 16, The Darwinian Necessity of Error. Let's zoom out even further, beyond psychology, beyond philosophy, and look at life itself. From a biological standpoint, without failure, none of us would be here. Evolution is, quite literally, a series of successful failures. Think about DNA. Evolution happens through mutations, which are essentially copying errors in our genetic code. If nature were perfect, if it never made a mistake, life would have never moved beyond single-celled organisms. We would still be bacteria in a prehistoric ocean. It was the errors, the glitches, in the system, that allowed for wings to grow, for eyes to see, and for the human brain to develop. When you fail in your life, you are participating in a biological tradition that is 4 billion years old. You are experiencing the glitch that precedes a breakthrough. If you want to evolve, you must give yourself permission to mutate. You must allow the error to happen so that the next, better version of you can emerge. Section 17, The Silence of the What If. There is a haunting quote that says, "The wealthiest place on the planet is the graveyard." Why? Because in the graveyard, you will find books that were never written, businesses that were never started, songs that were never sung, and inventions that were never built. All because the people who carried those ideas were too afraid of no, they were too afraid of looking foolish for a few months. I want you to imagine yourself at the end of your life, looking back. The failures you are worried about today. The awkward presentation, the startup that didn't take off, the social media post that got 0 likes, they will be invisible. They won't even register. But the things you didn't do? Those will be loud. They will be the only things you hear in the silence. Regret is a much heavier burden to carry than failure. Failure is a bruise, regret is a hole in your soul. Choose the bruise every single time. Section 18, The Hero's Journey, and You. Every story we love, from ancient myths to modern-day movies, follows a pattern called the hero's journey. And do you know what the most important part of that journey is? It's called the abyss. It is the moment you prove to the universe that you are worthy of the prize. Without the struggle, the victory has no flavor. You aren't being punished in the abyss, you are being prepared. You are in the middle of your own movie right now. Don't walk out of the theater just because the hero is having a tough time. Stick around for the third act. Section 19, Gratitude for the No. I want to challenge you to do something radical. Start thanking your failures. Thank the person who didn't hire you. Thank the partner who left you. Thank the investor who said no. Because those no's were the walls that kept you from a life that wasn't big enough for you. They forced you to turn around and find a better door. Sometimes, failure is the universe's way of protecting you from a success you aren't ready for yet. It's building your character so that when you finally reach the mountain top, you have the strength to stay there. A fast climb often leads to a fast fall. A slow, difficult climb, filled with slips and bruises, creates a climber who can survive any storm. Section 20, The Cosmic Perspective, The Pale Blue Dot. Let's take one final step back, way back. Imagine you're standing on the moon, looking at Earth. From that distance, every failure you've ever had, every embarrassment that kept you awake at night, and every project that collapsed, is completely invisible. You can't see the no's, the bank statements, or the broken hearts. All you see is a pale blue dot floating in the vast darkness. We often suffer because we make our problems infinite and our lives finite. We give a temporary mistake the power to define our eternal worth. But in the grand timeline of the universe, your life is a beautiful, fleeting spark. Why spend that spark being afraid? Why give so much weight to the opinions of people who are also just sparks? When you realize how small your failures are in the cosmic scale, you don't become depressed, you become liberated.